get started. I'm happy to share with everyone about what we thought about fraud detections and some of the cases that we have seen and happened to handle in the past. And I'm happy to also have my co-host, Badly, to be with me. And we'll, again, doing Dewey, right? I will be speaking in English and he will help me in Bahasa as well. Good morning, everyone. So let's get started by reviewing what's the situations on fraud, right? I believe frauds to the audience here means many things, right? We have seen that in the banking and finance sectors or insurance sectors, we have seen fraud that is in transaction, right? The credit card fraud, debit card fraud, ATM fraud, so that's a type. And then we have very prevalent right now in anti-money laundering, AML, so that's another type of frauds that have a lot of scrutiny at this point in time, right? Which I'll talk more on that later. And we'll also see from a market conduct perspective, as in how the banks, the finance company, and also the insurance companies sell, right? So that's what we call as market conduct, and of course, internal fraud or operational risk. So these are some of the kind of forms of frauds that we have seen in the past. And fraud will cause big losses, right? And also smaller losses. And so from an individual fraud perspective, this may not cause a big harm, right? I mean, you will think that, hey, I'm a bank. If I happen to lose 5,000 ringgits or 50 million rupiahs, that's a small sum for my banks. No big deal. Of course, that's in a way no big deal if that's the amount that we are talking about, but it will cause damages to the brands and to the trust. Imagine that this fraud costs somebody to complain, to launch a complaint, and then there's investigation done, and there's of course bad press for your organizations. That's become big, right? And as we all know, once this comes out, regulator, for example, the Bank Negara in Malaysia or the OJK in Indonesia, they will come to have close monitor for you, right? Of course, they may impose fine. That's in some sense you can say, hey, not big. It could be 1 million, 2 million in ringgit. There could be 1 billion, 2 billion in rupiah. So that's still okay, right? My bank can afford that. But how about the longer term damage? So I think one of the cases in the region, or in fact the whole world, that know for fraudulent cases involve 1MDB, that actually caused problem. For example, on banks being foreclosed or being closed, where the license are being evoked. That happened in Singapore, and big fines happen as well. So that's become a long-term damage, right? And link back to a recent case, the ICIJ FinCERT files. Those are the suspected activities reports that has been leaked that caused a lot of damage to the brands of the banks because they are implicated in all these files for lack of actions or being late for the actions. Of course, for different central banks, they right now forced to have reactions for this leak, as in they have to put in more scrutiny to the banks and the financial institutions. Guess what? I think my observations, and I think I think many of the audience here may agree. In economic crisis, fraud would happen more because people are becoming more desperate. So now the challenge is for us as a vendor and for you as the financial services player. How can we together prevent this from happening? How can we detect and investigate frauds in a more seamless manner? So let's do a quick assessment on the current methods, right? I think this is no stranger to a lot of you. And from left to right, we start from, for example, using internal audit. That's a better name for manual, right? So basically, you start from having investigations because there is a complaint, or there is the regulators actually told you that, hey, there's this thing happened and you have to launch investigation. So that's a bit reactive, but this happened, right? There are organizations that without strong tools, and we will sort to internal audit as a methods. And when you scale up, the methods includes red flag indication. That basically means rule based. So example of the rules is like rule 1. If X more than 10 times in a week, right, or Y, if the amount is more than 50 million rupiah. So now you have two rules, right? Of course, you have many other rules that you can define. So that's what we call as rule-based indicators or rule-based systems. And you advance from there. Slightly better than the rule-based that I talked about is basically scoring. So you put a bit more sophistication inside and say that, hey, now these rules, the first rules that I talked about, maybe worth 5 points. And then the second rules worth 1 point. And they aggregate it up, and then you can derive a total numbers, or you put it to high risk, medium risk, low risk, right? So that's another way of dealing with risk, and it's pretty commonly seen the second and third methods in the banks. But so now let's take a look into more sophisticated one, right? I talk about rule-based, no matter you are basic rule-based or the scoring models. Both types are still constitute to what we call rule-based, very traditional way, and a lot of financial institutions are using that. The good thing is it's simple, right? You have rules, then you just codify it, and then you put it in. However, you have a number of challenges when you just employ rule-based. Number one is that it's quite well known that rule-based cannot detect all type of frauds or a lot of frauds. So that's where the problem lies, basically, right? It's not uncommon that we have seen in the past. Let's say you have 100 rules being employed, 100 type of situations that is becoming a fraud that you have defined. Once our system has been employed, become like 30% more type of frauds that are able to detect. So it's very common that so there are some fraud that are not able to detect using rule-based. And once you have the ability to detect new type of situations, and then you try to codify it, you incur high maintenance costs, right? You have to basically get your developers to put in the rules, test it, and so forth. So that's another time to market kind of losses, right? Last but not least, a lot of our customers actually, when they employ rule-based, they have also maintained a large fraud monitoring or transaction monitoring department. Why? The reason is that there's a lot of what we call false positive, right? What is false positive? Basically, those are detected by the system as fraud, but they're actually not fraud, right? So those are what we call false positive. And if you have a lot of this happen, then your your fraud monitoring team will become very ineffective because they have to deal with cases that are not fraud eventually, right? After more fact finding. So that's rule-based. And some of the fintech companies and others would come up with other methods. Some are using, let's say, machine learning, right? So we have supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning. Each one of them will have their own challenge, right? So let's talk about supervised machine learning. You have to put label, so that's label intensive, and sometimes you don't know how to label it, right? And on unsupervised, sometimes you have an imbalanced model. So you can all imagine, right? For fraud to happen, I think 99.5% of the transactions or accounts are all good. So only this 0.5% of chance that there's a fraud potentially, right? So how can you fix this imbalance issues in this unsupervised machine learning? So that's become a challenge. Or some other organizations just venture down into knowledge graph. That's to find the links. So you do need business knowledge to be able to do it very effectively. And it's very time consuming as well. So that's contribute to the current methods that we have seen in the market for fraud detection.
Sorry, mungkin saya coba bantu summarize ya dalam bahasa Indonesia. Yang disampaikan oleh Pak Yokling ini adalah perkembangan dari teknologi untuk fraud detection method ya, fraud detection system ya. Secara tradisional model fraud detection system itu adalah yang masih banyak dilakukan saat ini adalah menggunakan rule based. Jadi udah ada set kriteria ya, rule yang ditentukan dari pengalaman terdahulu, baik pengalaman dari perusahaan itu sendiri ataupun pengalaman dari perusahaan lain dikumpulkan. Kalau ada simptom-simptom yang timbul atau gejala-gejala timbul, dia akan didetek sebagai fraud. Saat ini masih kebanyakan perusahaan menggunakan seperti itu. Tapi kelemahannya adalah ya seringkali miss dari kasus-kasus atau kejadian-kejadian yang baru yang belum ada simptomnya di sistem. Makanya dikembangkan perkembangan selanjutnya adalah menggunakan machine learning model ya, supervised. Di situ dia udah bisa melakukan labeling ya. yang supervised bisa melakukan labeling untuk model-model atau modus-modus fraud yang baru, atau menggunakan unsupervised ya, unsupervised learning. Di situ bisa melakukan clustering ya, yang lebih dinamis, dan terakhir juga yang advance adalah menggunakan mendeteksi network atau jaringan dari pelaku fraud itu dengan menggunakan teknologi knowledge graph. Kalau ada pertanyaan, Bapak Ibu sekalian bisa menyampaikan baik bahasa Inggris atau bahasa Indonesia. Kalau bahasa Indonesia nanti saya bisa bantu translate juga. Okay, please, please.
Thanks, Pak Peli. Yeah. So net is that if you just use one of these three methods, or rather you can combine it, but not structured in a way that you can help to detect more fraud, that's where the problem lies. So the thinking behind what we do as we call it KewDetect is how about we combine all these methods together so that in a process, in a methodology, to make it left no stone unturned. Basically, we can help you to detect more fraud and become more accurate in real-time fashion. So that's what KewDetect methods is all about. The thinking is very simple, right? You have invested maybe over 10 years, or worst case, maybe over the last few months in finding out rules, finding out the cases using rule-based, right? That's typically the starting point of any of the fraud detection. So the idea is that you have invested that. Why don't we use the knowledge or the expertise that you have already derived? And though we all know that this is only form a part of the facts, because there are other facts, like for example, other frauds that using the current expertise may not be able to detect. But that's from the first base. So that's what we call rule-based diagnostic. So we leverage on that, right? So first part. But at the same time, we also learn from the data, right? From your data and from alternative data that we have to bring in, whereby we are trying to find, hey, from here is your behavior of the transactions, is the behavior from the accounts, right? The accounts can be customers, the accounts can be merchants, and all other parties involved, right? So that's from the model-based diagnostic, and then we try to find the causal rules outside of this. So we learn from the expert, we learn from the data, and then we combine. And that's not the end. So right now, if we find cases that is constitute to fraud, we actually put it as case-based diagnostic as well. And we can find we can actually mine the heuristic part of the case base, and we'll see some magics in a short while of a particular case, right? And combine all this together, and that's become the case-based reasoning that I'll go to illustrate further. And it will be stored, everything that happens around this will store in the knowledge base, so that then the history can be kept. Going back to what I said earlier on, right? The key goals for the entire methodology is to make sure that we reduce the false negative, right? What has been not detected as fraud and is fraud, right? And the false positive, what has been detected as fraud and is not fraud, right? And net result is what? Net result is you have much more accurate cases that you just focus on, and you automate the entire process. And at the same time, you find the fraud rings, because we all observe, right? Fraud doesn't happen, likelihood is not happening in one single cases. You actually need to gang up with multiple parties, and that's where you can use tools like knowledge graph to find. Again, from left to right, we first look at, from the rules perspective, learn from the expert to identify and classify, and look at the patterns, and then what approach you have taken to do it. And then we look at your data, right, to again identify the cluster and the patterns, evaluate them. Is there cases that we have left off the hook? And we find potential synthetic cases or rocket merchants and go after them. Ultimately, I think for data is also contributing to a big factor, which I'll talk more in the next slides. That's where the cases where we are just not looking about the demographics data, and also we look at activities, and we look at all other possible data points that we can actually get in. So let's look at data for a little while, right? Data would typically, a lot of cases when we first started, we believe that a lot of companies or organizations focus a lot on the accounts data, right? Who is doing these transactions, what is the transactions, and so forth. That's not wrong. So that's a good starting point. But there are other places across your whole spectrum in your data store, right, that you can find more nuggets that you can work on. For example, where's the endpoint? Are they coming from ATM? Are they coming from the e-commerce website? Are they coming from your e-commerce website? Oh, sorry, your online banking website. And if it's going through channels that you have access or you have control with, for example, your mobile app, your online banking, and so forth, you can also get how they navigate. Is that the same patterns, right, that the same person do in the past? So these are the additional data points. But moving to it, if let's say you don't have this data, we can start with this and then slowly expand when you are able to get hold of other data sets. And we also look at how we can do it cross-channel, not just from one single channel perspective. What are the things that they have done in the past? Make sure that we have all this to be tracked. And then we look at entity linking, and later on there's some more examples of entity linking that we can look at, basically to find links between parties, patterns between parties, so that then we can have more accurate ways of detecting fraud. So this is nothing new if it's looking at it individually, right? So knowledge graph or link analysis is one way to detect fraud, right? But how effectively, if you treat it as a one starting point, then the person that look at it need a lot of knowledge, right? Need a lot of experience. But if you actually find links in other places, for example, we already go through the entire process and have a knowledge graph to just basically find those identified parties or merchants in this case, and it's very easy for you to find the linkage between parties. Before I go further on case-based reasoning, maybe I pass on to Pak Padley to summarize.
Oke, thank you. Sebenarnya yang disampaikan oleh Pak Yokling ini cukup unik ya, karena asumsinya adalah yang timbul dalam pengelolaan fraud adalah good people attract good people, bad people attract bad people. Dan fraud itu jarang dilakukan oleh individu, jarang sekali. Dari pengalaman kita implement beberapa model fraud ya di customer, itu yang namanya fraud itu sebagian besar dilakukan oleh sindikat. Makanya menggunakan knowledge graph untuk mendeteksi link dari masing-masing pelaku fraud itu sangat penting. Dan produk KewDetect ini memang salah satunya fokus untuk mendeteksi dari hubungan dari masing-masing pelaku fraud. Maybe that's it, Yokling.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Pak Padley. Yeah. So the key gist of how we help our customers to detect more fraud and in a real-time fashion, basically the secret sauce lies on CBR, case-based reasoning, as we call it. Right, case-based reasoning formed by 4 R's. Right, I'll briefly describe each of the R's. The first R is retrieve. Right, so when you have a new situations coming up, it could be reported as a case, or it could be a normal transaction that flow through. We'll take a look into it, and then we'll retrieve the most similar cases based on the past experience. Right, so that's the first R, retrieve. And then we model based on the knowledge in the past and try to find new problems or to solve new problems, right? So that's reuse, using modeling to reuse. And now you have something that you more or less confirm, right? Confirm score. Basically, is it a fraud? Is it not a fraud, right? Or how much percentage is skewed towards the fraudulent cases? And you need to do what? You need to evaluate it. Basically, we revise, right? We look at why the model or the case-based reasoning methods suggest that it is a fraud, right? Find out the reason so that you can do better investigations. And of course, all these are knowledge that you need to retain. So let me repeat again. We retrieve the cases, find most similar cases. We reduce by using models, right? We revise, make sure that there's all the reasons that why the model suggests this way are being discovered and is confirmed. And then we retain the cases. So retrieve, reuse, revise, and retain. Let's look at this particular cases. And I think it's pretty interesting because using a single methods, for example, if you just use rule-based, if you just use a certain type of machine learning or even knowledge graph, you're not able to find what I'm going to describe right now. Right? So let's look at from the left-hand side, the new case that's coming in, right? The new case is nothing suspicious. Basically, it says that a person is a director of two companies, company A and company B, and also establish the fact that company B is sort of quite new, equals to less than 5 years old. So that's the new case, right? And what happened then, the CBR would now do a search into all the old cases. And when you move into the different cases, you'll find this case end is about 10 days earlier that you have this happen case end. Case end is a confirmed case, for example, right? And case end, if you take a glance to it, there's nothing linked to the new case, right? Basically, it's company A, company X sell to company Y, and company Y sell to company Z. And when you do any of the comparison by eyeballing it, you find nothing, right? There's no links into this. But wait a minute, right? So you find certain things that's a bit of similar, not a lot of similarities, but a bit of similarities. That's between company B and also company Y. Both constitutes to as new, sort of a pretty new companies, right? So not a confirmed case, but it's a case for evaluation, right? So that's where the linkage can be established, and we find possible links. We find possible similar patterns, and when we find many more patterns and we match it against, this new case is then potentially a case that we'll want to dive into. Of course, whatever I suggested is actually happen automatically. There's no need to do a lot of fact finding manually. Bakali, you want to add anything?
No, not yet. Yeah.
Okay.
You can go with it.
Sure. Okay. So let me carry on with the case-based reasoning. So the entire case-based reasoning methodology happen in this manner, right? First, as I mentioned, let's not throw away the investment that you already use, right? That's rule-based diagnostic. So whenever there's new transactions, new case coming in, let's hit into these rules, right? These business rules, basically we make it a bit more in the Malay or Bahasa word longer, right? A bit loose. So previously you say that let's tighten it up. If X more than 10, we need to do we need to set it up as potential case. Right now, maybe you set it to 50, you set it to 100, right? So that this is a more loosely defined criteria. But however, even if the loosely defined criteria, you hit all the different business rules that you have defined, that's basically a case, right? That's basically a case. You doesn't need to go through the entire process of model-based or case-based. It has been determined by rule-based that it is a case, and therefore you can do an evaluation, so a case revise, and of course, after that, that has been projected as a result. If there's a need to send alert immediately, you can do so, right? So basically, that's one route or process that you can go through, rule-based diagnostic. And if rule-based diagnostic is not conclusive, then the transactions or the case can start flowing through model-based. Use scan and search, one type of machine learning methods to find similar cases. And if that's found, just like the previous case, right, is found somewhat, there's pattern matches, there's link being established, for example, then the 4 R's will get then kickstart in the case-based diagnostic. You first retrieve the case and use modeling to remodel it and to reuse the case. And once that has been done, it's flying through the process of revising it, basically to find why it's being suggested as a case, right? So we call this explainable machine learning. And once that's done, being evaluated, the next thing is, yes, there's a simpler way, simpler R, right, to retain it. So that's the case-based reasoning is happen in these methods: rule-based, model-based, and then case-based diagnostic.
Oke, ya, maybe I can start to summarize. Yep. Ya, jadi pada prinsipnya memang untuk fraud detection system yang kita propose ini, solution ini tetap menggunakan rule-based ya sebagai awal untuk sebagai fondasi ya case-case yang akan potensial fraud. Nah, case itu nanti kemudian dikumpulkan dengan algoritma Canary Snake Bar ya, jadi suatu cluster yang mirip satu sama lain, kasus-kasus yang mirip dengan menggunakan model based diagnosis. Jadi kasus-kasus yang banyak sekali, bisa ratusan ya sampel kasus dari model fraud itu kita kumpulkan menjadi beberapa kategori yang mirip, kasus-kasus yang mirip. Selanjutnya setelah proses kategorisasi itu terjadi, berikutnya adalah masuk ke case based diagnosis. Begitu ada kasus potensi fraud, misalnya kredit fiktif, kasus-kasus yang lazim itu sebenarnya bisa diidentifikasi. Satu, kredit fiktif, terus kemudian penggelembungan markup nilai jaminan, terus kemudian yang ketiga biasanya penggunaan dana operasional di cabang. Kasusnya itu nggak beda-beda jauh dari itu. Kalaupun ada yang berbeda itu biasanya modus-modusnya, cara-caranya melakukan fraud itu yang berbeda. Makanya dengan ada dictionary ya, dengan rule based diagnosis, terus kemudian dikembangkan menjadi suatu model untuk kasus-kasus yang mirip itu, kita bisa lakukan pengelompokan. Terus kemudian juga kasus-kasus itu begitu kita menemukan suatu anomali dari suatu proses, kita bisa melakukan case retrieve, dimunculkan kembali kasus-kasus yang dulu pernah timbul dari dictionary itu. Terus kemudian kalau terbukti bahwa itu memang true, positif, memang benar-benar itu kejadian fraudnya, kita simpan untuk di-retain kasus itu supaya nanti bisa digunakan untuk mendeteksi potensi-potensi fraud di masa depan. Dan juga kalau memang ternyata begitu kita lihat case-nya itu ternyata salah, ya maksudnya kita false alarm, kita menggunakan case itu kita lakukan revision sampai akhirnya kita bisa memiliki suatu dictionary, suatu kumpulan case-case yang sangat robust untuk mendeteksi potensial fraud yang timbul. Oke, Yogne, please.
Thanks, Pak Ali. Right. So this is the expected outcomes, and this is as an average or commonly seen numbers, right, from our customers. Typically, after we employ KewDetect, the key is that we find that the fraud detection rate, basically by fraud type, like now you have 100 type of different frauds that you can detect using your current methods. Let's say the rule-based method. Typically, we can detect 130. As in 30% type of more frauds or different situations that is more fraud. So that's the first case, and will help you to now able to find things that you can't find, right? So that's the first outcome. The other outcome is that I think is a good news for for the fraud monitoring department or for the investigator, because even if you have a big team, that's a difficult thing to do, right? If the current system always detected as a fraud and you have to go in for investigation, you spend a lot of time to do things that is not fruitful, right? Right now, since it's more precise, it's more accurate, the false positive are being reduced by 50%. So that means that you can go home early, right? Rather than you have to stay back to find all the frauds that are not supposed to be fraud, right? So, and this is the kind of advantages that we have seen based on our experience with customers. It is pretty proven and is scalable because the same methods, case-based reasoning methodology, has been applied to transaction fraud, has to apply for anti-money laundering, for insurance sectors like insurance claim or market conduct compliance. Basically, the agents or the sellers trying to sell things that they are not supposed to sell, or to use methods, representations that's wrong, right? So that's what we call market conduct. And of course, there's internal audit or internal fraud that some of the organizations launch and to help in their operational risks. So these are all cases that the different type of fraudulent cases that we have helped banks, finance sectors, insurance sectors, and even government to go after. Net is that, as I mentioned in the last slides, is more accurate methods, 30% type more frauds that you can detect, and you can also reduce 50% type of false positive, right? The other powerful capabilities of KewDetect is to be able to detect and codify new fraud, right? In the current days, right? You may still need to, there's new way of people doing fraudulent cases. Let's codify it. Let's ask yourself how long you need to do it. Maybe if you from conception, right, ideation stage to your rollout, potentially months, right? So I think that's what we observed in the past. Right now, this is automatic. because we are using case-based reasoning. And by using this, it's not just about finding the links, right? Using the knowledge graph to find the links, that's a given. But we're also able to find patterns. And just now I used a case of the company frauds that happens by looking at just patterns, not just the link, because there's no link, right, in that cases that I share. And all this was suitable for any of the workflows that you have. So in the next few slides, I'll share some of the screenshots for the past cases, right? Sometimes customers say, I have a case-based case management tools. Can your KewDetect integrate that back to them? The answer is yes. And some will say that, oh, I'm doing the transaction fraud. So it comes, the transaction is streaming in very fast. Can you send me alerts to the groups of fraud monitoring team? Yes, we have done it in Telegram, for example. We have done it in emails. That's possible. Or the other way is that I want more diagnostic, and sometimes I want to present to my management team. Can you put it in a dashboard for the investigator or for management? So the answer is yes, we have done it before. So that's how the results of KewDetect being subsumed into the work process of different customers. So let me share with you some of the examples. Right. So the entire KewDetect, the case-based reasoning now subsumed to just one single red dot. Right. Highly suspicious. So this is how one of the central bank in this region use this, right? So what they want is just highly suspicious, and low suspicious, right? Not in the numbers, and we can actually fulfill that. So this is a case-based case management tool. Examples that used by them. And once, let's say, for example, the official or the investigator find that there is something suspicious. So in this case, there's a case reported to Hyla in this case, right? You'll now launch, for example, the knowledge graph. Knowledge graph, if you have experienced this before, you may actually venture down into things like, for example, two parts. One is the entity. So in this entity is the organizations, the people, as well as the suspected transaction report or STR, and the relationship between all these parties, right? The person, the organizations, and the reports. So looking at it, hey, this is a mess. How can I start, right? So if you have tools like this to first find out the person, you can search the person, right? You can find, for example, where is Hyla? Hyla is here, right? So, and then you can now drill into what relationship Hyla has with different parties. And sooner or later, you'll very easily find someone called, for example, in this example, Raphael did, right? Is deeply connected, right, among all the parties that has been reported to the central bank through the suspected transaction reports, right? And guess what? Raphael Debt is not implicated in any of the transaction reports. It's just that they are linked to all these people that has been implicated. So this can be further further discovered. So this is suspected transaction reports 3, right? And this is number 4. And all this, guess what, right, is linked back to Raphael Debt. Sometimes Raphael Debt is receiving the monies, sometimes they are sending the monies. But this is how fraud can be easily discovered. And first through reporting to the entities, to the organizations, and next help you to save a lot of times when you want to find the linkage and the patterns. Fraud can also be showing up in the dashboards. I think the key is not about the dashboards, how pretty the dashboard, that's important, but where do you find the data and how accurate is the data? So right now it's a result of the KewDetect that the dashboard can show up in such a way, right? Percentage of suspicious claim, for example, you can actually look at the cases where there's highly suspicious, legitimate, or suspicious cases, right? You can also find out, let's say you are an insurance company, what type of products that more susceptible to fraudulent situations, right? In this case, of course, we sanitize the data, the product of A8 or D1 to D4. Those are the cases where more susceptible to fraudulent claims in this case. Which hospital, which locations that's more susceptible to fraudulent cases. And you can also find out, for example, right, where are those those fraudulent cases, what are the claims that they make? They make against, for example, more of a heart attack or cancer that make fraudulent claims. And so what are the reasons behind all these claims, potential reasons? For example, we detect that, hey, there's unusual length of visits or the number of visits. So those are the kind of possible cases that they have been reported for why the model believes that is fraudulent cases. Of course, you can do a lot of slicing and dicing using the dashboards. So that's basically cover the sharing part. And of course, now we venture down into panel discussions. I'll pass the ball back to Macy, and we'll have a dialogue together with Patty. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yoke-Ling. So thanks for your insightful sharing, and also thanks for Bradley to summarize everything in Bahasa Indonesia and share your thoughts. So we are now moving on to the panel discussion. So I have a few questions here with me that may help the audiences to understand more on what should we do next with this fraud detection. So Yoke-Ling and also Bradley can feel free to answer the questions here. So
sorry, Messi. Yoke-Ling,
yes.
Actually, there is one gentleman asking in the chat. Yeah, maybe you can check, Yoke-Ling.
Yep, sure. Maybe let me address the audience question first before we start the panel. And
sure.
Audience, feel free to chip in on any of the questions that you may have around this. So basically, we have an audience ask these questions on how do we detect misrepresentations in selling in the insurance industry by agents. So this is what we call as market conduct or market conduct compliance. We have done a few, we have actually dealt with that for a few customers, right, in a few countries, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia. That's where I think most of the audience are residing here. Basically, we are looking at a few steps. I think going back to case-based reasoning, right? Rule-based, model-based, and case-based, right? The starting point is always rules, and some of the things that we use is actually, for example, sales performance data, the customers' data, and so forth, right? Let me use an example of recent cases in Singapore. Of course, why the organization started this is that it's being implicated of not putting in enough measures by the central bank, and therefore they are being fined. And less about the fine, because they are large insurance company and paying the fine is not the issue. Basically, it's the damage to their reputation, right? So, and therefore they embark on this project. And the kind of facts that we are able to find and help them to strengthen this. For example, in the case of scrumming through the sales data, and there are sometimes find cases where the agents are having unexpectedly high sales. And typically this is a good thing, right? You have good sales coming in and fine. So that's detected as one of the kind of situations, unexpected high sales, compared to the norm of this person, compared to the norm of this type of agents, right? So that's one case. On the other hand, this is maybe pertaining to the Singapore, but I think similar cases similar situations can happen for others. Some other data points that we chrome is, for example, customer data, right? From customer data, we find that in the old, sort of like old cases, a lot of times this has been missed by the insurance company in the past, is on what we call as rental flat in Singapore. So rental flat in Singapore basically stay by the generally people that has financial difficulties, right? And those are the kind of locations or address that has been listed as the customer address. So that is where potential fraudulent cases happen. So I won't dive in further, that will bore everybody, but these are the kind of case that we can combine all the data points and using a methods like case-based reasoning to be able to detect the cases so that we are able to consider it as a case. Yeah. So I think, yeah, that's similar audience that raised questions. That's definitely correct. Actually, high sales is a good thing, right? High sales is a good thing. 100% correct. It doesn't represent mis-selling, right? But therefore, if high sales, and there are other kind of situations that I described that subsume into the same cases that represent by this one salesperson or group of salesperson, that's where the mis-selling happen. High sales is just one of the indicators that potentially things will need to be looking further, right? And that process has to be done in an automatic fashion. Let the machine tell us which potential cases in claims, for example, or in selling, or in from the agent perspective or group of agent perspective that we need further attention, right? So that's where the mis-selling can actually be flagged out. And of course, in the past, it's by complaints. So that's one way. And also by, right now, I think we are venturing down into early warnings. If we find that there are cases of such things happen, the system now can flag so that then you are able to dive in or do remedial actions before you got complaint from your customers or the regulators. I'm happy to share more, I think maybe on the individual fashions on this particular case. Yeah, happy to talk more later, but I think we can now dive into other questions or in the panel discussions.
Okay, thanks, Ling. So maybe we'll address more questions afterward, but let's move on to this questions first. So the first question is, what if I already have a rule-based system? So do we still need your solution?
Oh, pretty direct questions. I like. So yes. The quick answer is yes. I think as I mentioned, a lot of our customers, they do have a rule-based system and they find certain shortcoming. I think it's a question back to the customers, right? Whether they find that the current rule-based system has limitations that they need to really resolve. Yeah, is there any potential risk that becomes so big that you will hit with a big fine or you hit with reputation risk and a big claims? So that's when I think it's evaluating your current capabilities versus what we have. If you think that you need more help to solve the issues, then of course, having something more sophisticated, more complete than a rule-based would be definitely needed.
Ya, ya, maybe sorry Messi, maybe I can add something ya. Mungkin Bapak Ibu ya, pertanyaan tadi bagus sekali. Jadi sekarang ini rata-rata perusahaan finance dan bank memang sudah memiliki mungkin fraud detection system yang bersifat rule based. Nah, pertanyaannya, apakah penting untuk mengimplementasi dengan case based reasoning seperti yang tadi disampaikan oleh Yokling? Jawabannya penting sekali Bapak Ibu, karena sekarang saat ini modus-modus untuk melakukan fraud itu jauh lebih berkembang. Dan kita tidak mungkin menambahkan kasus-kasus baru itu tiap saat, nggak mungkin. Sedangkan sistem ini dengan sistem menggunakan case-based reasoning memungkinkan bahwa sistem itu untuk mendeteksi modus-modus baru yang mirip dengan modus-modus fraud yang terjadi sebelumnya. Kalau zaman dulu tuh harus presisi. Oh, kalau ada kondisi seperti ini, A, B, C gitu ya, A, B, C gitu. Oh, ini fraud tipe ini, gitu ya. Ada case management timbul gitu kan, case issue. Tapi masalahnya sekarang modus baru untuk fraud itu banyak timbul. Walaupun sebenarnya ujung-ujungnya seperti yang tadi saya sampaikan ya, studi kasusnya di customer kita yang kita sudah selesai implementasi, itu nggak jauh-jauh dari satu ya dalam konteks kredit nih. Itu pertama adalah kredit fiktif. Terus kedua tadi markup nilai jaminan. Terus kemudian ketiga adalah penggunaan budget di luar ini di luar kegunaan, budget untuk dicabang di luar penggunaan. Terus keempat ya memang timbulnya sindikat-sindikat. Sebenarnya pelaku dari pengalaman kita Bapak Ibu, pelaku dari fraud itu sindikatnya sebenarnya kita sudah bisa deteksi. Sebenarnya kita sudah punya semacam kayak orangnya itu aja dah, gitu. Cuma dia mutar-mutar banyak bank dan perusahaan finance saja, tapi pelakunya itu aja. Walaupun memang di dalam banyak kasus, dari studi kasus yang kita perdalam, itu memang selalu rata-rata melibatkan orang dalam. Walaupun tidak selalu ya, tapi rata-rata melibatkan orang dalam. Maksudnya orang dalam dari dari bank maupun finance tersebut. Dan sistem ini karena juga diimplementasikan di banyak tempat dan kita juga menyimpan baik yang rule based maupun sistem ini berlatih sendiri ya, masih machine learning ya, dia berlatih sendiri untuk menemukan case-case baru atau modus-modus yang yang tipikal, yang setipe. Jadi bisa mendeteksi kasus-kasus yang tidak bisa terdeteksi oleh rule based system. Oke, yeah, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Bentley. So the next question will be, okay, so we take the same scenario here. I already have a rule-based system. So how could your solutions leverage on what we have invested?
Yep, thanks, thanks, Macy. So, and it is quite a typical case. Normally, our customers, even though they are sophisticated, they are pretty big. Yeah, the banks, the government sectors, the insurance company. So they will have something. So, for example, they will have rule-based systems, right? And those rule-based systems sometimes quite complex already, right? They have hundreds of rules and so forth. So they say, hey, I invested 5 years of effort and a lot of money inside. Can I leverage that? The answer is, of course, yes. If you recall how case-based reasoning works, the step one is really about rule-based, right? So we take a look into your rules, and of course, we can combine with our experience to see if your rules is good enough. Let's run the cases and the transactions through the rule-based. To do the first filter, of course, we may tune the rules a little, make it a little bit more loose, so that you wouldn't have hit into so many of false positive cases, right? So and in case the result is not conclusive, which means then we have to go back to the model-based diagnostic and also the case-based diagnostic. So that again, go back to the team, right, is leaving no stone unturned. We make sure that any of the accounts, any of the transactions are coming in, any of the case that's being reported, we run through this so that we significantly increase the accuracy of the detection.
Okay, thanks. So Bradley, do you want to add on something?
No, not now. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So I think this question will be more relevant to a lot of organizations, like maybe this is their concerns. So we might have a plan to move forward to this fraud detection projects, but we only have limited rules, data, and cases. So should we start now with your solution, even we don't have that much of rules, data, and cases?
Yeah, thanks, Macy. Yeah, we face this as well, right? Sometimes they have a newly established situations. For example, I think there's one insurance company that want to embark on market conduct, and they are pretty new, into that. Or there are even government agencies that want to establish certain guidelines or regulations, and that has been just started. So cases like that pretty is not new to us. My thoughts would be that you need something more sophisticated to help you, right? And you want to start to start to collect the case, to start to evaluate your own rules. I think that's perfectly fine, yeah. But I think this is where I would look at the situation. If let's say in a year, you just started, let's say in the next year or so, you expect that maybe you can detect like there will be 50 cases that happen. And using your manual methods that you start to build up the knowledge, like the rules, the data, and the cases, you may detect 5-10 cases. If you really invest and you want to put in more sophisticated infrastructure right now, and let's say we finish the implementation in let's say 6 months time, in this case, then you are able to detect more type of frauds. Maybe not reaching all 50 cases that we are able to detect. I think that's is pretty unrealistic situations, right? But if let's say we are able to get 30, 40 kind of cases, that's where the worthwhile investment is. And what's happened is that right now you are able to leverage on this much stronger, solid foundation, move forward in your fraud detection exercises going forward.
Okay, thank you. So, Bradley?
Yeah, thank you. No, right now, Messi. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So let's move on to another questions here. So in the beginning of Yokling's presentation, right, you did mention about the recent ICIJ leaks. So I would like to know what's your thought about it, and can your solution help to solve those issues which have hit market confidence for those banks that are implicated?
Right. Thanks, Macy. Yeah. I believe the audience here mostly are from financial services, and ICIJ FinCert leak is not something new to you, right? And I think some banks are being implicated, and we see news that this bank are being implicated and so forth. Though I think this week things got subsided, but I think in the last few weeks these are all in the news. Definitely, I think from our perspective, not something new to us. This is about anti-money laundering, right? And for anti-money laundering is not about central bank has certain guidelines and certain rules. We just compound and send in the reports based on the rules that they set. So that's the minimum thing that I think financial institutions need to do. You need to do more, right? And because sophistication from the fraudulent players' perspective, they are getting a lot more sophisticated. I think in the past we say that if 50,000 is the threshold, we break it down to 49,000 each, right? Something like that, so that you get past. So of course things are getting a lot more sophisticated. I think even central bank right now, some of the central banks are even regulated this part, right? So if you have more of this, how many times, and then you report that. Having do what the central bank told you to do is a minimum. If the cases that somehow reported or being found out is something that makes you very embarrassed, you will need to put in stronger practice, and regardless of whether it's KewDetect or some other more sophisticated method, is something that I think for you to evaluate. But definitely, I think do more than what central bank needed, so that then you are not being implicated in such a embarrassing situations.
Ya, Yokling, maybe I want to add something ya. Mungkin Bapak Ibu ya yang tadi dimaksud dengan ICIJ Vincent ya, itu adalah Vincent ya. Itu adalah kebocoran ya, data yang dibocorkan ya, bahwa bank-bank itu melakukan transaksi yang melibatkan terorisme, melibatkan organisasi terorisme, organisasi drug dealer, dan banyak perusahaan atau bank-bank terkemuka yang memperoleh dampaknya. Akhirnya ada yang didenda besar sekali, memperoleh denda yang besar sekali, dan reputasi. Karena kan resiko bagi bank itu ada dua, satu resiko yang umum ya, resiko finansial dan resiko reputasi. Risiko finansial mungkin bisa di-cover dengan uang ya, walaupun ya ada kerugian tapi bisa mudah di-cover. Tapi kalau resiko reputasi itu sangat besar sekali impact-nya. Yang ICIJ itu banyak bank yang kena. Salah satunya yang paling besar sekali itu kan HSBC, Bapak Ibu sekalian. Dan sistem ini karena kita melihat mendeteksi potensi-potensi fraud dari awal, meminimalisir, kecuali kalau memang disengaja oleh pihak bank. Karena kan juga dari hasil risetnya memang diduga ya, patut diduga memang dari pihak bank sendiri yang sebenarnya memang menerima transaksi yang bermasalah tersebut, yaitu transaksi dengan perusahaan terorisme, transaksi dengan narkotik dan sebagainya. Nah, ini sistem ini setidaknya kita memberikan informasi bahwa transaksi ini berbahaya, potensi fraud, dan menimbulkan potensi resiko, baik resiko finansial maupun resiko reputasi. Kalau soal keputusan, yaitu kembali kepada pengambil keputusan masing-masing. Oke, Yokling. Oke, Messi.
Thanks, Bailey and Yoling. So we have two questions more here, so please bear with us. So the next one will be, can Yoling or Bailey share one of your customer case studies so that we will know that how it works in the real world?
Right. Sure. I'll share one of the largest bank in the region. We are honored to be selected to help them out in this journey. So what happened is that, as one of the largest banks in the region, they will definitely have sophisticated rule-based systems in place. But they know, though I can't go to details, but they know that there are different types of frauds that that are going off the hook for these rule-based systems. So that's the first challenge that they want to address. Right? They want to get better. The second challenge is that they have a big team of fraud monitoring practitioner, right? I think the last that I met them, I think they have about 30, 40 people. But this 30, 40 people sounds like a big team, right? Sounds like a big team for any of the organizations, but they themselves are having challenge to meet the timeline, right? You can imagine that. So since this is for fraud detection, the amount of transactions that are flowing through to this large bank is a lot every day, and they have a lot of customers and accounts. And if the false positive that happen through their rule-based systems actually make them overwhelmed, right? Every day they go home very late and they are quite demoralized because every time they start looking at it, they have to take a look into the case, they have to do more fact-finding. Hey, this case is actually legitimate transaction, so take it away. This case again is legitimate transaction, take it away. So they waste a lot of this time, right? Basically, and therefore we are honored to help them with this. And basically, the numbers that I reported earlier on, they are having that quite similar numbers. Basically, after the implementation, they still leverage the rules that they have put in by the experts, but essentially make it through the case-based reasoning. And what happened is that 30% hide more frauds that they are able to discover. And then, of course, the kind of and what makes them happy is that they are actually able to do it in a automated fashions. There's no need to code it into the rule-based systems. So that's something that they're happy. And of course, the fraud monitoring team right now are happier, right? Because they are dealing with cases that more confirmed, right? We won't say it's 100% confirmed, but it's more confirmed. So therefore, the kind of workload that they are experienced in the past is in the past. No more.
Ya, oke. Ya, saya mau menambahkan dari yang disampaikan Yokling itu, kebetulan saya juga mengikuti prosesnya. Itu kasus yang dialami oleh bank tersebut adalah bahwa sering terjadi yang disebut dengan namanya false alarm. Jadi secara teknis disebutnya false positive, isn't it, Yokling ya? False positive ya. False positive. Jadi false alarm. Jadi banyak masukan potensi fraud ya, informasi soal fraud, tapi setelah dicek itu ternyata false alarm, alarm palsu. Jadi ternyata enggak. Dan walaupun mereka sudah punya sekitar tim untuk ini fraud untuk mendeteksi transaksi ya. Karena transaksi mereka itu miliaran sebulan. Sebulan bisa 45 sampai 6 miliar. Saya nggak sampaikan detailnya ya. Jadi untuk mendeteksi itu mereka perlu 30 sampai 40 orang untuk mendeteksi potensi fraud dari transaksi, baik kartu kredit maupun transaksi ATM dan sebagainya. Karena sebelumnya mereka menggunakan rule base yang nggak bisa mengcover potensi resiko fraud seperti ini. Akhirnya dengan sistem yang dibuat oleh dengan menggunakan KewDetect, akhirnya potensi fraud positif itu false alarm bisa dikurangi. Jadi tim dari mereka yang 30-40 itu nggak stres lagi, karena sebelumnya stres sekali. Bayangkan Bapak Ibu yang mendeteksi transaksi sekitar 4-5 atau 6 miliar sebulan, itu besar sekali. Gitu kan, dan banyak sekali false alarm, jadi yang kita dianggap sebagai kondisi fraud, padahal setelah dicek ternyata bukan, dan itu menguras banyak waktu, menguras energi, dan membuat mereka stressful. Hasilnya seperti tadi disampaikan Yokling, berkurangnya false alarm, berkurang ya, nggak 100% Bapak Ibu hilang, tapi jauh berkurang, dan potensi untuk mendeteksi fraud yang real jauh lebih besar. Oke, Yokling, oke, Messi.
Okay, thanks, Padley. So let's go through the last quick question. So your solution seems expandable to many frauds or compliance situations. So why is it that so?
Yeah, thanks, Missy. I think as we have shared, while today I think we don't have time to share in details, and we are happy to do so. We are using a method that called case-based reasoning, and it's not a traditional case-based reasoning as well. We combine many of and we put the common methods, right? Rule-based, machine learning, knowledge graph into a process, into a methodology, so that and has been tested with all these cases. That's where using the same methods, we are able to now go across. the different kind of fraudulent cases, like what Macy have mentioned earlier on. And so basically what we need is when we approach a particular companies is, hey, how do you classify that as fraud? What is the rules that you have applied? So that's one thing we need to know. And then we got all the data, relevant data from them. And we may actually look for alternative data that can complement those internal data sets. And that's where we start. And there's no single companies that's similar, right? So for example, in transaction fraud, if we do it for bank A, doesn't mean that we bring the whole case into bank B and bank B can apply without any changes. The quick answer is no. So you still need to go through that process, while our experience and the cases that we have experienced in the past can really help out in the whole implementation aspect for customers. So that's how we are able to expand the fraudulent cases, fraudulent use cases using the same methods.
I see. Okay. So thanks, Yokling. Is there anything you want to add on, Patley?
No, thank you, Messi.
Okay, so I think this is about the end. So maybe we give to the floor 2 minutes for any questions that you want to ask. Please post it there, or I can also unmute you in case you're interested to ask the questions. Okay, seems like no questions. So since we are kind of like over time already, so let's end this now. So I hope you guys find it helpful to you, and hope you guys enjoyed the webinar today. So if you would like to understand more or would like to find out more about how we can help your organization specifically, and you can feel free to contact us through the contact details below. You can take a quick screenshot as well. And then also we will share the full recording to you guys after this webinar. So this is the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us. And then thanks for your time, really appreciate that. So we will organize more webinars moving forward. So I hope to see you guys again. And yeah, that's all. Thanks everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thanks everyone. See you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.